Bond. James Bond.
Hello, everyone out there, and welcome to the 16th Shakin and Not Stirred, and also the very first episode of 2026. How you doing, my man, Adam? My co-host. How you doing?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Doing good. Glad to start this year off with a literal license to kill. So it's very, very going to be a good deep dive here this evening. But before that, you see anything good recently?
Well, I've been watching a lot of my New Year's Eve nights was spent at home watching the Twilight Zone marathon.
Oh, that's cool.
And I've been watching on Pluto as well because Pluto's got a 24-hour Twilight Zone.
That's still going.
The Twilight Zone is. Sadly, though, the 24-hour James Bond channel has been removed at the end of.
I know.
The last movie they played was You Only Live Twice, which kind of disappointed me. But what
I don't know
else?
if you heard. I don't know if you heard the news that I believe in the middle of this month.
Netflix.
Yes, the whole.
I was gonna get to that. Yes.
That's pretty cool.
So I was happy with that's a good part of it. The only thing that sucks about it is I kind of dig the randomness of turning on Pluto and seeing which one's on and having to choose. But
me too.
Whatever, it's fine. The fact that you can get the content, you can stream the content, on an app like Netflix or whatever is great because you can watch whatever James Bond movie you want whenever you want.
I'm a sucker for just whatever Pluto's like. I can go through their movie channels, man, and they're playing a lot of good stuff. You mean you could?
I watch more of that now than I have YouTube TV, but I probably watch more Pluto for like shows and shit like that than I do YouTube TV.
I could see why for that, definitely.
But yeah, I've been watching that, and I went to the theater on Sunday. They're playing Temple of Doom at Imagine, so now I've seen all three of the original Indiana Jones trilogy in theater. And other than that, I've been watching the Hoosiers, watching college football, the Bears, obviously, and that's
tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, the Hoosiers.
Hoosiers tomorrow. Yeah, I'm gonna be a wreck this weekend. Got the Hoosiers tomorrow night, and then they got the Bears Saturday night, and things can go south in this household real quick. Poor Bronwyn.
I was also going to state last night I watched, I don't know if you've ever sat down or when the last time was, but I watched Mel Brooks' High Anxiety.
I've loved High. That's probably one of my favorite Mel Brooks movies.
Honestly, dude, amazing movie. Honestly, it was a little bit of a hard day. Saw it was on HBO Max. I hit play, and I was really it's a great movie. And honestly, go ahead.
Mike Griffith is a huge high anxiety guy as well. We love that movie.
So my point is that it was really cool that there was a little parallel to some James Bond in there. Some spoofage of Jaws. I thought that was what the one character was, which I thought was pretty cool. But it'd been such a long time, honestly. If you would have asked me anything about it before last night, I could have told you about the song, a couple scenes, but to actually sit down and watch it again last night, it was a good watch.
Yeah, it always is. There's one of those movies that is on. I'm like, oh, this is staying on.
And I eventually checked out One Battle After Another. Thought it was
What did you think?
Thought it was a good movie. Thought it was a real good movie. To be fair,
I did get my fiance to watch it, so I did watch that too. Since we've talked last, I probably should have mentioned that again. So she liked it a lot too. But what did you think about it?
I really, honestly, because I've always been a big fan of his. I really enjoyed Sean Penn's performance. I thought it was ridiculous in all the right ways. Of course, DiCaprio, awesome. Benicio, awesome. Story, awesome. I mean, a coworker though brought up this interesting point, which I never thought about. Is that, and I guess I'll ask you because you would. He thought it was a little redundant in the beginning of the film. All the times after they have blown something up, that they had to keep having sex. Like, why did they need to keep showing that part? Like, would you do that after bombing that many times? Like, maybe one time, maybe back at their own place, I argued the fact that that would have showed that she was, like how she got in with Sean Penn, like she was willing to do anything at any moment, that type of person. But I really didn't feel any which way about it. Didn't change my thought about the
Well,
movie.
no, and they didn't get like, it wasn't like there was any graphic scenes, and they didn't have those moments like take much screen time up either.
I think it was more of
You
the
know what I'm
fact
saying?
the story, like if you were if you were what were they? Would you call them mercenary? What would you call them? They were of freedom fighters. Would you every
Sort of.
time you committed that act, would that be something that that type of person would do? That question, not they showed it too much in the movie or that didn't work, but like more of like the characters themselves. If that was a real life situation, would they really stop every single time and do that? That kind of question, but
Oh, okay.
it's
Well,
stupid. It's not really that big of a deal. My favorite part though was the way Sean Penn's character ended. I thought that was hilariously brilliant. But good
that
stuff,
car,
man.
dude, I'm telling you, that car chase sequence through the desert,
That
the
was
way that
awesome.
was filmed, yeah,
I mean,
the
I'm gonna
suspense
go
on
back
that.
and watch that part again.
Yeah, and it wasn't anything like, there wasn't a lot of stunts or anything like that involved. It was just the way it was filmed that this built the suspense like a Hitchcock movie would, the way they did it,
They did.
towards the
They
end.
did.
So, but yeah, I love that movie, and when I watched it again, I didn't have any different thoughts about it. I liked it just as much.
Would you say that as of right now, is that your film of the year? I mean, obviously the year's over, but are you not there?
Um,
You get back to me if you.
Probably.
Did you see Marty Supreme yet?
No, I haven't seen Marty Supreme yet,
I want to see Marty Supreme.
but I do want to see Marty Supreme. But I'll see that. Yeah, like I would say One Battle for Another was probably my favorite movie I saw this past year.
Did you
But
see Eddington?
yeah, I saw Eddington.
I like that movie.
Yeah, it was a good movie too. It's difficult for. I think I can see how some people can find it difficult to keep them reeled in a little
Yeah.
bit, but like I thought it was, the way it was filmed was awesome. Obviously, performances were good and everything too. So
In both movies, I'm a real big fan of like black comedy almost because like Leo's ridiculous, Benicio's doing some fun stuff, but that's what's cool about Paul Thomas Anderson. Always did a good job. Definitely enjoyed it. Definitely top 5 of the year. But hey, let's bring ourselves to a 1989 James Bond flick called License to Kill. We are in our second Timothy Dalton film.
and last Timothy Dalton film.
Sadly.
And so this one, oh boy. So this is easily, without question, I mean, I'm not taking when I say this, there's the Daniel Craig films, which are kind of reminiscent to like the Jason Bourne films in a way, the way the violence fighting is. This one is easily, to me, the most violent Bond film there is. And it's not even close. So, not just in the fact of the fighting itself, there was not a whole lot of like hand-to-hand like combat fighting in this. It was just the way things unfolded, the way people got hurt, the way people got killed. It was just brutal. So it was definitely, the last movie we were talking about was kind of, it deviated from the Roger Moore era and kind of got in its own new thing. It was a little bit grittier and it's more of a realistic story in a way. This one is a revenge flick, and it's like, I wouldn't say it's like Kill Bill revenge flick, but it's like it's a revenge movie. And this is the first Bond movie that was kind of like that, had this darker tone to it, I think. But to me, it worked out fine. I liked it better than The Living Daylights. I found it more compelling than The Living Daylights. And I like The Living Daylights, but like to me, it's a very mid Bond film. This one is more, to me, and I'm not sure if people who are Bond connoisseurs and enthusiasts share this opinion with me, but I think it's a top 5 probably Bond film. And what makes it that is not just the story itself or anything in particular, but the darkness of this, how awesome the villain is. Robert Davi in this movie is probably, you could say, like, if I said, or someone told me like that guy is the best Bond villain, I might not put up an argument for that, because he eats up the screen in this one, man. He really does when he's on film. And it's not because he's like, acting all crazy or, maniacal or anything like that, but he's very plotting, he's very calm for the most part. And just, dude, the sheer brutality of like some of the stuff that he does in this movie is just, it's kind of what I want to see in a villain. So to catch up with it, like, this is the second Dalton film. It's released in 1989, and the budget for this film is right about 32 million. They brought back John Glenn, who's directing his last Bond film. It's the last for a handful of people, because they take some time off after this before GoldenEye. So the only one who it remains basically is going forward would be Desmond Llewellyn playing Q. But it had a 32 million budget. The problem with this one was domestically it did not do well at all. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the people still didn't quite like the Timothy Dalton version over Roger Moore, and not so much not like it, but like they didn't prefer it, or it's not something they were like really compelled to go see, like they would a Roger Moore Bond movie or a Connery Bond movie, for instance. But this one only grossed about 35 million domestically. Now, worldwide, it did over 100 million. And then altogether, it grossed, I think, about 155, 156 million. So, I mean, it made money, but adjusted for inflation, this was the lowest, domestically, this is the lowest grossing Bond film there ever was.
Oh.
So, and people think like that had a lot to do with why they took time off, and it really didn't. There was a lot of stuff that happened. I'll get into a little bit later, but like that happened in between, that way, stopped Dalton from coming back, and it stopped basically, like, Albert Broccoli retired, and then there's a few things that happened that prevented it from being basically another 2-year stint before another Bond film came out. So this came out 89, GoldenEye came out 95. That's a 6-year gap right there. And that was the largest gap for a Bond movie, or in between Bond films. But anyway, so this movie basically was, when it was introduced like to the media and stuff, it was newspapers were reporting like this is the most violent Bond film yet. And they weren't kidding about that either. But the reason they were doing that is because they were trying to kind of keep up with late 80s movies at the time, like Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, for instance. So this was the first Bond movie to actually get a PG-13 rating, and which is not saying a lot, because The Living Daylights and View to a Kill were the only ones that were even made during the advent of PG-13, which the movie I mentioned before, Temple of Doom, which I went and saw, was started the whole PG-13 rating. So that was 1984. So View to a Kill came out, Living Daylights came out, and those are the only ones that came out, during that time. So saying it's the first Bond movie that PG-13 rating isn't a huge deal, but it had to be because of its violent content. But yeah, it didn't do too well domestically. But there is a reason for that too. It wasn't just the movie itself. So I'm going to list the movies that came out. 1989 was just a killer for blockbuster movies. So Batman came out that year, which we all know how huge Batman was. Lethal Weapon 2 came out. The Abyss came out. Ghostbusters 2. Back to the Future Part 2. Star Trek 5. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Wow.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out that year. And then on top of that, there was a little movie called Roadhouse that came out in 1989, which blew everybody away at the box. No, but in a perfect world. But so anyway, but the point I'm laboring toward, obviously, is that the fact that it went up And obviously it was released a certain time, and these movies all weren't released at the exact same time, but it had to go up against some of these at the same time, and that took away from its box office take, I think. So James Bond wasn't quite like something like this wasn't quite as unique as it used to be, because now you have like movies like Lethal Weapon and Die Hard movies and things like that like people look at. Predator, those are the kinds of things in the 80s. Everyone was kind of looking at. The Running Man, just things like that. They were just a RoboCop, like those are the action movies they were into. So I think they kind of leaned toward let's have more actual violence in this film and see how it works. But it was kind of just diluted with the rest of those films, and then with everything that came out in 1989, it was kind of just another movie, another action movie that came out, instead of like, hey, it's a James Bond movie coming out. So I think they had that stuff working against it. So it was written by Richard Maibaum again, and his Michael G. Wilson and Richard Maibaum. There was a writer's strike at the time where Richard Maibaum couldn't finish the film, so Michael Wilson actually finished writing it. And I think the writing was pretty good on this. And the most compelling thing is, like I said, is about the villains. But the characters in this movie, besides the villains, are pretty average. The Bond girls are, kind of average in my eyes. You can say they were kind of like lower mid Bond girls, kind of on a lower level, I would say. The cool thing about it is the main Bond girl, who's Pam Bouvier, is played by Carrie Lowell, is very, 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 very involved in the film, and she has a good role. It's a strong role. It's not something where, like I said, she's like a damsel in distress or anything. That's more the Talisa Soto character, who is the villain's girlfriend in the movie, and just trying to get out of that whole situation. So, but I mean, and Talisa Soto, to me, it wasn't that good. I mean, the writing didn't help her, I guess, that much either. But like, she doesn't really, and I don't know if she's been in anything in a long time. I know she was in Mortal Kombat and things like that. But other than that, I mean, she hasn't really done much, and she was kind of just eye candy on the picture, I think. You had besides Robert Davi, I already mentioned. You had Timothy Dalton coming back as James Bond, Robert Davi. Those are your main characters right there with Carrie Lowell. You had, in the picture you see right here, you have Benicio del Toro, who this might have been I don't know if this is the first film he did, but it was one of the first films he did. And you can tell he looks young. And his character isn't written all that well either, I don't think. He's a cool villain because he's just a maniac and just almost pure evil. But he always has this weird evil smile on his face during the movie too, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, they kind of overdo it with his character a bit. But he suffers a nice grisly death at the end, so he gets what's coming to him. But other than that, you had Anthony Zerbe as Milton Crest, and he was in, people might remember him the best from like the Matrix Reloaded. He was one of the heads of Zion in that film, but he's in this movie, plays kind of a guy who's helping smuggle cocaine for he's, I don't know, it was cocaine or heroin. I think it was cocaine. And he's a very sleazy character in this film, and he kind of acts sleazy throughout the whole thing. But that was kind of like what they were going for. So he's kind of your sub villain, not really a henchman. Dario, who's Benicio del Toro, is more like your henchman type character in this film. But other than that, you had Desmond Llewellyn coming back as Q for the millionth time. But what's awesome about him in this movie is he has more screen time in this movie than I think any Bond movie. So it was kind of cool to see him in the field again. He was in the field a couple times, but he's really in there a lot this time. And on top of that, sharing the screen with Robert Davi if you remember, in Die Hard, when he was Agent Johnson, there was another Agent Johnson, and he is also in this film too. And he has kind of a smaller role in this, but it was kind of funny that both Agent Johnsons were actually in this movie. But he works for like the DEA, and but his name is, I love his name though, Grand L. Bush.
Grand L. Bush.
Yeah, that's just Grand L and Bush. Great name. Also, kind of a small role. The recently deceased Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa was in this film. And he was kind of like in it briefly. Like I said, people remember him a lot from like Mortal Kombat as well. It's kind of funny he was in Mortal Kombat and Talisa Soto was Mortal Kombat as well. Other than that, you had Don Stroud as Heller. He is, and like some of these characters aren't really developed real well. The Heller character isn't really developed all that great. You had Caroline Bliss coming back as Miss Moneypenny, and it's kind of sad because like she didn't get a lot of screen time in Living Daylights, which is okay. It was her first go around, but this time she had even like less. So it's almost like they just pushed her out of the film except for a couple scenes. One cool thing about this is you had David Hedison come back as Felix Leiter, and he played Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die. And it's the first time an actor's ever come back to reprise that role of Felix Leiter. There were always different Felix Leiters. So he came back, and this is by chance. I think he ran like Albert Broccoli at a party or something like that, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come do this or whatever." Then we had the lady who was Felix Leiter's bride, Priscilla Barnes. She played Della Churchill, and everyone knows Priscilla Barnes from Three's Company, where she played Terry. So she was the character. She was the character after the blonde character after Suzanne Summers left the show. So she plays Felix Leiter's wife in this movie for a brief time because bad things happen. But and on top of that, you had Anthony Stark, who I have to mention because he plays Truman Lodge. He was kind of like Robert Davi's accountant, financier in this film. Mm-hmm. And he is a guy who's in Seinfeld, who was Jimmy, who always referred to himself in the third person. They'd be like, Jimmy does this, Jimmy does that. So he was actually in this movie too, which was cool. And then you had Everett McGill, who is Killefer, the guy who betrayed Leiter and Bond. And it's kind of funny, his name was Killefer. He was also in Under Siege 2. He had blonde hair in Under Siege 2. So, You
ever see The People Under the Stairs? I believe he's in that.
Yeah, he's in. So, like, he's been in a few things, but
he's good. He's a good character actor.
He's a good character actor, is right. And you have Frank McRae as Sharky, who is inexplicably like great friends with Bond and Felix Leiter, although you've never heard of him before. But he's in this for about the first third of the movie until he gets killed off. And then it's awesome that Wayne Newton's in this movie.
That is awesome.
He plays Professor Joe Butcher, who's basically like a televangelist is what he is. But he's a front for like the amounts of money he's asking for people to donate is really his way of telling different drug dealers, here's a price we're going to charge for this now. And it's kind of like it's the way they just kind of hid the whole business. So he plays kind of a dirtbag in this too. Which is kind of funny just to see him do that. He's got to, But so cool. The cast is pretty cool, And Carrie Lowell did fine as Pam Bouvier. She wasn't like spectacular, but like her presence was definitely felt in the film. And she has I think she has a pretty strong role as opposed to like Talisa Soto's. But I want to run through real quick before I even forget the way I talk about how violent this movie is. Mm-hmm. I'm just gonna read off a couple things I wrote down here, okay, of ways people died in this film.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'll give you the kind of how it happened, who it happened to. So the beginning of the movie, Sanchez, Robert Davi, finds Talisa Soto, Lupe there, in bed with her new boyfriend, and Robert Davi has him taken out, and then he actually has the guy's heart cut out. Before he starts beating her with like an iguana or lizard tail or something, it's something weird, and he just beating her over the back while this dude is getting his heart cut out outside. So that's the way we kick this movie off.
Oh yeah, very.
after Felix Leiter and them catch Sanchez, and then Sanchez, Killefer, betrays, takes the money and takes the bribe, and he goes and gets Sanchez out. And when Sanchez goes and grabs Felix Leiter after his wedding, he drops Felix into in this warehouse in water where these sharks are, and he gets his leg bitten off from the knee down, just lost his leg. While that's going on, his wife, Della, Priscilla Barnes, Terry, if you will, if you want to call her Terry, we can call her Terry from Three's Company. She gets raped and murdered while that's going on. Then Killefer, after Bond catches up with him, has him eaten by a shark. And then when Sharky gets killed, Bond's ally, he gets a Bond in kind of a rage, harpoons a guy right in the chest. And for some reason, I don't know why either. When he harpoons a guy, there's an explosion. I don't know what the hell it's all about. But that was just anyway, but either way it happens. So and then Milton Crest, Anthony Zerbe, the sleazy guy I was talking about, villain, he gets framed by Bond, and Sanchez catches him, or he thinks he catches him, and he has him killed by putting him in a decompression chamber, cutting the hose, and the dude's head expands till it explodes.
Big Trouble in Little China type stuff right there. That's cool.
It's just brutal. And then the most brutal one I thought in this film was when they killed Benicio del Toro's character off Dario at the end. And just before the final chase sequence, he gets dropped. There's a conveyor belt, and he gets dropped into an industrial grinder that grinds up, you can grind up rocks and shit like that in there. And it just grinds him up slowly, ankles all the way up to his head. All you hear is him screaming, all this blood coming up and everything. You can just imagine how horrifying that is. And then in the very end, the last kill, when Bond kills Sanchez at the end, he sets him on fire because Sanchez is doused in gasoline. And Bond uses a lighter that Felix and Della gave to him as a wedding gift to their best man or whatever. And he uses that and lights him on fire. And that's how Sanchez goes up. So there are some brutal scenes in this movie, and brutal kinds. And on top of that, you have the shootings and things like that, the normal stuff. One guy, actually, I forgot. One guy got thrown into a tank of electric eels. So we have that going too. So they covered all the bases in this, different ways to get killed. And so it was wild, man. But
I think in hindsight, you're absolutely right. I remember back, like we always say, you're kind of the one that got me all started in a lot of this James Bond. So when I went through and started watching these for the first time, and I watched this one, if I would have saw this with you in a movie theater and we walked out of it, I would have been like, I'm shocked at how good this movie was. I like Carrie Lowell. I think she did a fine job. She's not definitely in my top 5, but I think she could be possibly in my top 10 because the movie's so awesome. Those kills you mentioned are why I like this, because of the hardcore nature of them versus maybe some of the silliness in some of the other James Bond movies. So
yeah, it is. And the thing is that there's nothing silly about any of these. I mean, there were some kind of brutal killings in other movies, but it was kind of, you always had like a little pithy remark or something afterward. Yeah. This one you didn't. It was just, because it was just a very serious film. There wasn't much humor at all involved in this. I find humor, and my brother finds humor in a lot of Robert Davi stuff because it's just funny. But
I like what I mean by it, and you would agree with me too, is that when you're watching some of the ones with Roger Moore, it's good. It's a different. This is a good laughing in a different way than this is laughing sometimes how I laugh at Roadhouse. They're not delivering a funny joke, but in the James Bonds at Roger Moore, some of them he is trying to be a little witty, and they are kind of funny. So
yeah, he's intentionally trying to be funny. Like this movie, yeah. There's some things that we just laugh
at. It's ridiculous.
It is, and it's so I don't know. It's kind of sick that I find Sanchez so funny, but I think it's just the way it is. But Maybe it's just because it's Robert Davi. I don't know, because I find Robert Davi funny. But in Sanchez, like, so this film is the second time in Live and Let Die they did this as well. They had a fake country. There's a fake country in this film as well that Sanchez works out of, called Isthmus City, and it's kind of a reference to Panama, because Panama was big in the news at the time, and it lies, like, Panama, like, lies on an isthmus, so they called it Isthmus City. And he's kind of like Emmanuel, like the dictator there was like Manuel Noriega, and he's kind of like the Pablo Escobar to like the Isthmus City's president in this one. But yeah, it's pretty wild, man, and it's kind of funny, but like I find as much humor like in this one now as like a lot of the other Bond films, where you shouldn't find humor in this, but you kind of just do. But that, to me, like, you watch things enough and you watch with your friends enough, like you'll always find like things, like inside things that you guys kind of only know, or like, I don't know, it's kind of like that. So, but I think, like, I don't know, when's the first time you watched this movie? Was it more recently, or you watched a while back? Or
I watched it probably 3 years ago for the first time, but backdating it even back to the 89 or 90. I mean, I do remember this when it came out, and like my dad watching it, which is weird because like I watched a lot of other movies. I just never sat down and watched this one, which, to be fair, if I would have sat down and watched this way back then, I probably instantly would have became a fan of James Bond. Because, to be fair, I was shocked that after watching this one, that why he didn't get to make another movie, because I thought it was that good. But
yeah, and then it goes. There's a lot of things that happened too. There was also in 1985 there was this thing called the Films Act that was passed, and it removed this levy called the Edie levy, and what happened was, like, foreign artists were being taxed more heavily. So like the associated rising costs of like Eon Productions, like no part of the movie was like, this is unlike any other Bond movie. Like, this wasn't able to be made in like the UK at all.
yeah.
So like Pinewood Studios was used in every Bond film. It wasn't able to be used in this film. All I could do was like post-production stuff, like sound re-editing, things like that, re-recording, this stuff like that. But you couldn't really actually do any of the production like in England. So that kind of like was annoying, and like they had to kind of work through that. And then, beyond that, you didn't have like Albert Broccoli retired, between the legal problems and stuff like that. Like John Glenn left, Eon Productions, and Richard Maybaum died in 1991, who was a writer for several Bond movies now. And then just all the legal stuff going on over the ownership of the Bond character, and all those departures delayed the release of the movie so much. But yeah, this is the last one. Like, Albert Broccoli was there from the beginning with Harry Saltzman, and when Saltzman left, Broccoli stayed on. And then now you have Barbara Broccoli, doing a lot of this stuff in production. But yeah, he and then there was so much time in between that Broccoli retired, and Timothy Dalton just decided not to do a third movie because there was too much time in between. And it was like, okay, we're going to keep you on, basically on call almost. Okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And he was kind of like, don't commit to anything, because we're going to do this. And after a while, he's like, I got to do other stuff. I can't wait around for this. So he didn't get another shot at it. He wanted to, and he didn't want to leave the whole Bond universe. He liked playing Bond, and he would love to go on for a third one. But it's just that with all that stuff that happened in between this and GoldenEye, it just wasn't worth it for him. And you can completely understand that too. And he coming back 6 years later might not have been a good idea, because I don't know exactly what Timothy Dalton looked like in 1995, but it could have been a lot different. The guys, if you saw him in the casino in this movie, the one part he's in Sanchez's casino, when his hair slicked back, the dude's already got a pretty big receding hairline. So it's like they didn't even cover it up like they did with Connery so much. So they who knows? Like 6 years later, he could have been like, I'm not going to look like this anymore, and I want Bond to be like a younger. I don't want to start getting into like the Roger Moore, area of maybe I'm hanging on a little too long. But the whole thing, going back to the not being able to film in the UK, a lot of it was filmed here, or it was filmed like Jamaica and different places in the US. They actually used during when Sanchez escaped, the 7 Mile Bridge, it's called, and it's in the Florida Keys that connects the Keys, and it's the same bridge they used in True Lies at the end. So that bridge actually used in like, I think a few movies, and so the locations and stuff like that were fine for what this film was. It didn't really hurt it in production value, I don't think. At least in my opinion, it didn't. So, but like like anything else, every Bond movie's got exotic locations. This one kind of reused Jamaica, a lot of stuff from Dr. No. They even reference, you hear Felix Leiter reference Crab Key in the beginning. And that was, the island Dr. No was on in Dr. No. So that was kind of a cool little throwback to that. There is one, like when they're doing, I want to mention this real quick. I don't know if you noticed this, but there was a ridiculous shot in this movie of when the helicopter landed at the beginning and they're chasing Sanchez, where it's like a slow motion shot of like the DEA agents and then Felix Leiter holding like their guns and like running in slow motion. It was the most 80s looking fucking shot I've like ever seen, dude. Like it was like, I didn't notice it so much back then, but then rewatching it over the years, I'm like, that is who decided to do that? Like when you watch it again, just like look at that and it's like, it doesn't even fit into the film at all.
I also just realized too, when I spelled this out earlier, I used the wrong spelling of license, which I find to be awesome that they used the British spelling of license. So as you were talking there and I was listening to you, I went already back on the YouTube and made sure I used the proper British spelling of license.
Well, one of the little trivia things I'll spoil ahead of time here is it was originally supposed to be called License Revoked.
Okay,
but
that wouldn't have been as good as License to Kill.
Well, the American test audiences, a lot of them didn't know what revoked even meant, so they just go with License to Kill. So that was one of the little facts I had in here. But yeah, it's the movie's. I said the movie's great. The action sequences, the end, like the chase sequence with like the tankards and all that stuff going around the hills and everything, dude, it's awesome. Sure. And I said Sanchez was just such a great villain. It's a cool story. Like I said, it's a good revenge tale, and I like it a lot. Most people I talk to about it, like they like it, but they don't really consider it that high on the list. And it's got mixed reviews from people who like I said, are like Bond enthusiasts and things like that. But also a lot of Bond enthusiasts now really hold On Her Majesty's Secret Service in such high regard, where I still don't yet. I don't dislike it as much as I did before, but like I just don't get it, like why that one's held in such high regard to a lot of those people now. But these people have also been watching Bond films. They study it. People have done podcasts on it, so I trust their judgment on it, and I'm not going to say they're wrong or anything like that, because everyone has their own opinions on it. But this one, to me, I thought was better than Living Daylights, and Living Daylights is generally regarded as a better film than this. But I just don't think it may be a better film overall, but I don't think it's a better Bond film. That makes sense.
I think if they would have, gave Joe Don Baker a little bit more to work with,
maybe that's part of why
it wasn't.
Yeah, it's
Robert Davi's cooking in this movie. He's got some good, as you said, those lines that make you laugh because they're so ridiculous.
The whole note that's left on Felix Leiter, he disagreed with something that ate him. There's something like that. Yeah. Oh, I did forget to mention one other kill. Heller got impaled by a forklift. Towards the end. And just sticking out. I mean, like, that's another brutal killing in that movie. It's just, it's just one after the other. It's like, let's just keep topping ourselves. We have people with head explode, forklift, impalement, people eaten by sharks, burned alive, grinders, everything.
Now, I know you told me before that the theme song to this movie is your favorite of all of them. I'm kidding.
Oh, I better say on my
No, you never said
I don't dislike it. But here's an odd thing about that too. So this started doing in, some Bond films. I don't know if it was this. I don't think Living Daylights did this, but or maybe it did. No, it did because it had like a Pretender song or something in it. But Bond films started having like different songs at the end of the credits than they did from the opening theme. So Gladys Knight did the theme for License to Kill, which I thought was cool how they came in on how it went into that. So you have the pre-title sequence of them catching Sanchez and they parachute in and all that stuff to the wedding, and it goes boom right into like Gladys Knight, and then Maurice Binder's pre-title sequence, which was this was his last film too. So, but his pre-title sequence, and it was good like any other Bond pre-title sequence, and the song was pretty decent. The song at the end of the film was by Patti LaBelle, and it actually was the song "If You Ask Me To" was on, I don't know if it was in the Billboard charts, but it made it much bigger than the actual License to Kill theme itself. So that's the song that people remember most from this movie. So that's kind of one of the only times I've ever seen that actually happen. So, but and I mentioned this last time, this was the first Bond film where like the License to Kill theme, like you really don't hear it throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It's not mixed, it's not integrated into the score. And I mean, I should mention that John Barry, his last movie was Living Daylights, so he didn't do this one.
Michael Caine.
Yeah, Michael Kamen did, and but John Glenn said he picked him because he felt that he can give the closest thing like what John Barry did. So, and the score was fine. It didn't integrate the actual title theme into the film.
Like it used to, like the other ones did.
Yeah, that Patti LaBelle song at the end, like I said, that made it bigger. Then Celine Dion even covered it like later on down the road, So that's the one that made it, that kind of hit it bigger. But if you look at it's kind of sad because at the end of this one, like, so Richard Maybaum's his last appearance in this. I shouldn't say appearance, his last contribution to this movie as a writer. It's John Glenn's last movie as director. Maurice Binder, who does a title sequence, is his last movie. Robert Brown, I forgot to mention him, is coming back as M. It's his last go around as M. So, and then Caroline Bliss, is that she does 2 movies and she's out. And then Timothy Dalton does 2 movies and he's out. So they're pretty much starting all over. Besides Q, he, like I said, but this was a good one for Q. He was really involved in this one. There were some cool gadgets he had. One of the gadgets he had actually was held and used by Christopher Neame, who had a cameo in this movie. And Christopher Neame played Johnny Alucard in Dracula AD 1972. So got to throw that in there. But it's a very brief scene that he was in as well, and he got killed off pretty quickly. So, but yeah, I definitely recommend this movie. The pre-title sequence is pretty action-packed. The killings are just brutal. It's a cool revenge story. Timothy Dalton does a good job as the type of Bond that would be in this particular scenario, I think. And all the actors, like I said, it's pretty well cast, I think. I said Talisa Soto's kind of weak, but other than that, Carrie Lowe, like you said, not the best in the world, but certainly not the worst. And her character was pretty cool. And the villains were just, like the main villain, I should say, was just off the charts in this one. So he had no real super, Dario, Benicio del Toro was his henchman, but Benicio del Toro at this point was not hitting his stride yet.
Well, no, but that's what's funny is that I can, after talking about, one battle after another, if you just watch them in a camera next to each other, it's so cool to see someone's progression go from such a role that was nothing to being pretty awesome in anything he's in.
Yeah, and actually, Talisa Soto, I'm not trying to pile on her, but her role was initially offered to Maria Conchita Alonso, who I think did The Running Man instead of this. So I'm not sure if that was why she declined or what, but she was offered it first, and then so Talisa Soto wasn't even the first pick for it, but she served her purpose in it, and at the end, all of a sudden, she goes away with the Isthmus City president anyway. She just walks off with him like it was not. She's kissing James Bond. Olsen. Oh yeah, I'll go with this guy. And just walk. So it was kind of weird how it all ended. But yeah, then Bond, the woman bed count for Bond wasn't huge in this one again because Timothy Dalton doesn't really. I mean, he had 2 of them. So he doesn't put up those Roger Moore numbers. So
No, he's different kind of Bond.
I mean, it's about as opposite as you can possibly get. Like I said, it's okay. And this was his last go around. It was a good movie. This is the first one I really remember as a kid coming out. I was only like 6 years old when Living Daylights came out, and I wasn't really enough into. I've heard of James Bond and something like that, but I never really like watched the films or got into it until License to Kill was the first one I remember being in the theaters. So Goldeneye was the first one I went and saw in the theater because I was about 14 at the time when it came out. So that was the first time I went and actually saw a James Bond film. But this was the first one I remember being in the theaters and having its run. But like I said, it went up against such heavyweights. I mean, Batman was one of the biggest releases of all time up to that point, and he had a lot of sequels to a lot of big franchises coming out that year. So it just suffered from that. And it just, it didn't recover for a few years. But when it came back, it was even better, I thought. So
well, that's what's going to be awesome about our next episode. We get almost like a brand new fresh start on episode 17 of the series.
Yes.
Any trivia? You got any more trivia here for us before we?
Yeah, I got some little nuggets of information here for you. So I mentioned Milton Crest, Anthony Zerbe's death. They used like a prosthetic head, and it was created by this guy named John Richardson. Did like practical effects for the film, and they based it on a mold of his face. But the result, was when they actually filmed it, was so gruesome, they had to shorten it and tone it down a bit to avoid like censorship issues, to even make it into the PG-13 thing. So as bad as that was, apparently it was even worse. It was even worse. John Rhys Davies, who was in Living Daylights, who also the guy I mentioned before, who played Salah in Indiana Jones: Last Crusade, he was offered a cameo role as General Pushkin, who would reprise the role of General Pushkin from Living Daylights, but he declined because he was filming Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So they didn't get him in the movie because of that as well. At one point, Leah Thompson was considered for the role of Pam Bouvier, but she turned it down in order to star in Back to the Future Part 2 and 3. So again, like I said, these movies were taking some of these people away that they wanted to get in. One throwback here, Pedro Armendariz Jr., who played President Lopez in the movie, of the President of Isthmus City, the Noriega type character. His father was Pedro Armendariz, who I mentioned a long time ago because he played Karen Bay in From Russia with Love.
Whoa!
So his son ended up being,
in the movie series
a smaller part. Yeah, in like years down the road. So Franz Sanchez, our buddy Franz, his name is. They gave him that name because it's kind of a nod to Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra was a friend of Albert Broccoli, and Robert Davi was a friend with them as well. And he was also a big Bond fan. He always wanted to play a villain in a Bond franchise, but never did. But they named Franz Sanchez kind of as a nod to Frank Sinatra. So I thought that was kind of cool that they kind of did that. I already mentioned the license revoked thing that didn't go over too well with the American test audience. And in a little weird twist, so Talisa Soto, Carrie Lowell gets the guy at the end in this movie, but Talisa Soto would go on to marry Carrie Lowell's future Law and Order co-star Benjamin Bratt and Demolition Man veteran Benjamin Bratt.
There we go.
Which is obviously his best role.
It was. Objective.
And he was always with Miss Congeniality.
I know.
But so the scene, I was talking about locations earlier too. The scene where Bond resigns from MI6, that was shot at the Hemingway house in Key West, Florida. So that was Ernest Hemingway's house down there. And that's why you hear him say, like, when M takes his or revokes his license to kill, he says, well, like, he hands him the gun, and Timothy Dalton says, well, I guess it's a farewell to arms, because farewell to arms is something that Ernest Hemingway wrote. So they kind of slid that in there as a nod to one of his novels. was these are my I think these are probably my two favorite ones because these are kind of cool. So Pam Bouvier, Carrie Lowell's character, her alias in the film was Ms. Kennedy when he first meets her in Felix Leiter's house. So he's her alias is Miss Kennedy, which is a reference to Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and whose maiden name was Bouvier.
Really?
So they kind of just mixed that
Flipped
around.
Flipped it. That's cool.
And then my favorite one, this is kind of a ruthless, sick bastard, but because of the events that ensued in Her Majesty's Secret Service, now Felix Leiter and James Bond both share the horror that both of their brides were murdered on their wedding day. This is what I'm saying. This is why I like License to Kill.
That's very interesting, though.
Yeah. So, and his poor wife was killed by Dario Benicio del Toro, who gave her, according to him in the film, gave her a nice honeymoon. Which I wonder how many takes they did for that too, and said we're gonna go with this one.
That's one day we'll have to sit together and you'll just point to me all of your favorite sound clips and we'll just clip them all together and just keep playing them because you do there's so many great little one-liners in all of these movies, man. They really, really are really
good. No matter if they're funny, like if the movie's potentially funny or not, it's like there's stuff in all of them.
That's the one thing I've always enjoyed about your company is that, like, growing all my friends and we'd watch movies and it was all the same stuff. Like, it could be somebody's name, it could be the way their dialect was, it can be something it could be something like you just said, and it makes it more fun and funny to be into that movie. I think, like the things like you were just saying, what was the one you just did? Do it again.
Oh, the Dario line when he says he gave her a nice honeymoon.
Stuff like that. It's great because you just always remember it. But I think when we come back in a couple weeks for GoldenEye, we're going to be loaded with another great James Bond movie.
We may have to review the movie and the game.
There you go. I mean, we're definitely going to have to talk about the game. That's definitely going to be part of it. So we're going to be in for a packed episode of awesomeness. So make sure in 2 weeks you tune in to our 17th episode for GoldenEye. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm sure there's got to be a lot of awesome trivia for that. I can't wait to hear about that. And all of the other awesome stuff that goes into that movie. Next week at the show, we'll be back. We will be for our season premiere. We will be talking the classic John Carpenter flick, The Thing. We will be digging deep into The Thing.
You're a big Thing guy.
Oh yes, I love The Thing. Also love the original from the 50s, The Thing from Outer Space. That's
you put a 50s horror movie in front of me.
Oh, I know. That's why I have to mention it. I have to just say, not only do I love The Thing, but I know you love that 50s Thing from Outer Space. But that's I got a couple here. I actually got a couple here that we'll talk about sometime, like this from the 50s. This one called The Crawling Eye. It's really cool. But definitely, my man, check into that next Friday. And the Hookup on Music is also rolling. Doing episodes. We just released one this past Tuesday, so go and check that out. We talked about the final concerts, or some of the awesome concerts that were actually at the Chicago Stadium before it closed down in 1994. The final show was actually Urge Overkill and Pearl Jam. 1994. Really? That would have been quite the show.
As much as I've known, I never realized Pearl Jam played the last show at Chicago Stadium.
Yeah, which
I know Elvis played his last show in Market Square Arena.
That is true.
I know that.
But also, Elvis's last show in Chicago was at the Chicago Stadium, which is crazy too. It was like just a couple stops, obviously, before that. But definitely cool there. Check in and everything else going on here at the Sadistic Penguin studio. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Adam, for joining again in this awesomeness and sharing this coolness. And we will be back at it again in 2 weeks for GoldenEye. So
hopefully, by the time we're back at it, Indiana has won the national championship. And hope to God, I don't know if it would be played by then, but And the Bears have beaten the Packers, for God's sake. I can't
Yes.
do it.
Yes. But until that time, I can't wait to see, and we will be here to share that news with you next
Otherwise,
time.
I might go on my own revenge journey. So we'll see.
I know one of the two are definitely going to make you proud. I just don't know which one. So we'll talk soon.
Well, otherwise, I'll be going on a revenge tour through the whole state of Wisconsin.
Everyone, take care out there.
All right, man.
Have a good week. Bye.
Bond. James Bond.